Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Jacob and Jacob podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Robum, joined by my co-host, Jacob Hare. And today we're very lucky to be joined by a special guest, the voice of the Flyers, Jim Jackson. Jim, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Glad to be here, guys. Jacob squared. This is good. I'm all set to go.
Jim attended Syracuse University, and from there he became the Flyers radio play-by-play announcer and eventually became the Flyers TV play-by-play announcer, a position he still holds. So, Jim, thanks for being here once again. Let's get right into it with the questions.
Sounds good.
First question for you is, how did you get into broadcasting and why did you choose to go into that career?
Well, it's a long time ago in a world far, far away, it seems. But I basically wanted to be involved in sports in some way from the time I was, 8, 9 years old. And it didn't take me too long after that to realize I wasn't going to make it as an athlete. Just not enough skill there, not enough talent. And so I wanted to find another way. And really from the time I was 12, 13, I would watch games on TV. We didn't have as many options as you guys have now, but I'd get a tape recorder and I'd actually call games off the TV when there were games on. And my father said, why don't you go into broadcasting? I mean, you could go into writing as well, but that's a way you could maybe make it to a major league, make it to a top level. And you're not going to do it as an athlete, so try that. So that was in my mind really from the time I was very young. I grew up in upstate New York, and you mentioned Syracuse. And being in Utica, I was an hour away, so Syracuse was always my goal. And I was fortunate enough to make Newhouse, which is a great school. Learned a lot there. And was on my way. I mean, once you go to a school like Syracuse, there's so much competition that you become motivated. Maybe it's fear too, but it's peer pressure, and you really want to keep up with all your classmates and so forth. So when I went to school, I probably would have settled for being sports director at my local radio station as an ultimate goal. But by the time I graduated, I wanted to be president of CBS. I wanted to be at the top. So that pushed me. And then from there, I got into the commercial world.
Did you always have a love for hockey, or were you open to other sports?
I was a 4-sport guy. Didn't matter what sport. I love football. In fact, if you ask me today, am I a bigger football fan, baseball, basketball, hockey? Probably football is number one for me. And I do know football right now. But I did some college football. I did some high school football when I got out of college. And I could definitely do it if I had to. I love it. I did in school basketball, football, and lacrosse. So when I was at Syracuse, those are the 3 sports I got. And then when I got out of school, I went to work for a station back in my hometown in Utica, and they did minor league professional baseball and hockey. So I started doing some of those games. So really, by the time I was 23, 24 years old, I had done the 4 major sports, some in school, some out of school. So I felt I could go in any direction. And really, hockey called me more than I called hockey, because the New Jersey Devils moved their AHL farm team to Utica when I was there, and I had become sports director at the radio station by then. We got the rights, so I ended up doing their games. That's, in essence, AAA, right, for hockey. And I did 6 years of that and then got the job in Philadelphia. It's not really a complicated journey. A lot of guys zigzag all over the country on their way to their ultimate destination. I was hometown, an hour away to school, back to hometown to Philadelphia. So it was a pretty nice journey that way. But and baseball, I did minor league baseball, as I said, out of college. So after I was here a couple of years, I started to get the baseball bug again. And when the lockout in the NHL hit in 04-05, I was fortunate enough to get a job doing the Trenton Thunder AA baseball for that summer, and that really got me back into the baseball bug. And so I had a relationship with David Montgomery. We had gone to lunch here and there over the years, and we kept doing that. And finally, the conversations started leading to, hey, if you got any openings with the Phillies and I could still do the Flyers, I'd love it. And in 2007, I got hired there, and I've been doing both sports ever since.
So what's it like going from calling the speed of an NHL game with the Flyers to calling a baseball game? Much slower, obviously.
Yeah, they're opposites. I love them both the same. The next question is probably, which one do you prefer? And I don't have a preference. I use this story all the time. I have 2 kids. One is the older child is my daughter. She's about 5'1". She's a peanut. She's totally organized, very driven, kind of in her world to some degree. I have a son who's 6 foot. He's going to go play college hockey this fall. Big kid, not as organized, but has a heart of gold and all this. So there are differences in the two children. I love them equally. Two sports are complete opposites. Baseball is slow paced. It's a marathon. It's how you plan things over the course of usually a 162 game season, and you see how these storylines develop. And I love that pace about it. Hockey is right to it. Action every game, shorter season, more physicality, more intensity, and I love that about hockey. So I love both sports. And if you ask me which one's more difficult, I say baseball, because baseball is you're constantly thinking during a baseball broadcast. There's stuff going on, whether it's in the bullpen or the manager with signals, pitcher, catcher, the fielders. There's just so many things going on that I feel like you always have to be on top of that. Whereas hockey, it's kind of like playing hockey. It's really muscle memory. I see it, I call it. And so it's not as mentally taxing. Physically, maybe more taxing because you're talking more and your energy level's up a little bit. But in terms of working the old noggin, probably less, because it's already there. You can either call it or you can't. So if I had to say one was more difficult than the other, I would say baseball. But in terms of love, I love both sports equally.
So before you were the TV announcer for the Flyers, you were the radio play-by-play announcer. What was the transition like from radio to TV?
It was not as big as it might be in some markets. Gene Hart, you guys, I don't know if you remember, you don't remember him, but you know of him. Gene was the legendary Flyers voice. He is the voice of the Flyers, and he educated the fans of the Delaware Valley on hockey, and he did so in a simulcast. So his call was mostly a radio call on television, and that's what people got used to here. So really, that's what the powers that be wanted me to continue, is kind of a radio call on television. So it's not quite the same. I don't give quite as many locators as I did on radio. I can let the pictures describe the action a little bit more than I do on radio, but I still have pretty much a radio call on television. So the adjustment wasn't as big. I suppose the biggest part of the adjustment is you have to adjust to someone else basically telling you what you're going to talk about. Because whatever the camera is showing, you have to talk about. Whereas in radio, you talk about whatever you want to talk about. So there's more freedom in radio and more control from the producer or what have you on television.
So being the Flyers announcer, you travel with the team. A lot of travel, of course, probably very difficult. What are some of the ways that you do? What are some of the things that you do, to pass time and also to stay on top of your game while you're on the road?
Oh, passing time. Not as much time as you might think. So I'll give you an idea. If the Flyers, in a normal circumstance, nothing's normal anymore, but in a normal season, let's say we're playing the Bruins. So the Flyers are playing the Bruins on a Thursday night in Boston. So we would leave at 2:00 or in that vicinity from Philadelphia after the team practices on Wednesday. And we'd get to Boston around 5. Boston, we always hit traffic, but probably get to the hotel around 5 or 6 o'clock. You really get to town, it's almost time to eat dinner, right? So a lot of times we'll go out as a group, the broadcasters, or maybe I stay in and get room service, but we eat dinner. And now it's 8, 9 o'clock. Usually time to do a little bit more prep work, maybe watch a movie, maybe just get away from the hockey bit of it for the rest of the night before you go to sleep. You get up in the morning, and I get up right around 7, and it's almost time for the morning skate, which is bus usually leaves at 10 o'clock. So I get up at 7. I do a lot of my updating of stats, then jump in the shower, and then head to the morning skate. And that takes you through to about noon, 12:30. You get back, grab maybe a little lunch, do all your final preparation on rosters and so forth. And by 3 o'clock, take a quick nap. And, 3:30, get dressed, 4 o'clock, you're on your way to the game. You do the game, you leave right after the game. So there's really not as much downtime. There's some downtime when you have long trips where you might have a complete off day on the road, but I can count them on one hand usually over the course of a season, maybe 3 or 4 a year, where you have a complete day off on the road. So there's not really as much downtime as you might think. It's not as glamorous as people might think either. Not that I'm complaining. I love getting out and getting into other cities. You at least see the cities and so forth when you're flying in or driving around, but to sightsee and things like that, not really all that much time. Baseball travel is different. Baseball travel, while you have games every day, you also are there. You're in a city for 3-4 days, right?
Mhm.
So you have time maybe earlier on in the day to go out and maybe see a site. You have time to go out and check out some of the nice restaurants or whatever. You have to get to the ballpark by 2, 3, 4 o'clock. But you do most of your work for baseball right at the park, whereas hockey, you're doing a lot of prep in your room. So a little bit different for baseball, maybe a little bit more time there. But if there is downtime, it's really mainly just maybe catch a movie, maybe go to dinner, maybe sleep. There's really not like that much downtime.
What was it like this season with the Flyers? A lot of travel to start the year, playing in Prague in the NHL Global Series, coming home for a game against New Jersey, and then heading to Western Canada for that road trip. How was that for you?
Well, it was tough on the team for sure. I had never been outside of North America. I mean, I'm old. I'm 57, and I had never been outside of North America. I never really had that much interest. I'm kind of I like the United States kind of thing, but I'd been to Canada, of course, many times, but never outside of North America until that trip to Switzerland and Prague. And I got to tell you, I probably made a mistake there. I should have seen the world a little bit more, because it was a great trip. Switzerland, beautiful, and it's naturally beautiful. And then Prague is beautiful in terms of the architecture and so forth. It's an ancient city that was left alone during World War II, so the architecture is really as old as you're going to see in the world in some cases. So it was a great time, but I mean, we played, I can't remember the numbers now, but I think the Flyers played in something like 7 time zones in the first 11 games of the season, some crazy number. So we were all over the place. They could have done us a favor not giving us the Western Canadian swing after one home game, after returning back from that long trip. And so it was tough for the team that way. You kind of didn't know what time it was, because we were switching from time zone to time zone. But Vancouver's a beautiful city. Calgary, I love. So again, it's not like I was in a rough place. I was seeing Prague. I was seeing Lausanne, Switzerland. I was seeing Vancouver. I mean, this was not torture. So I might sit here and say it was tough for the team, the travel, not knowing what time it was and all that. It still was a pretty good life. I'm not complaining. And now, having been homebound for 3 months straight here, I'll take a trip anywhere you want to send me right about now.
Do you have a favorite road trip with the Flyers, maybe to the Midwest, to Chicago, St. Louis, or the West Coast, California, or even Western Canada?
That's tough. I like pretty much all of the trips. I mean, the obvious easy answer would be Montreal, which is a beautiful city. I love Chicago.
Yeah.
I have many friends in LA. It's completely different atmosphere out there. I have a lot of friends, and I love Dallas. Can't really argue with the Florida trips in the middle of the winter either. So there's a lot of reasons. If you're asking me from a hockey standpoint, it would be Montreal. It's a tremendous rink. It's just made for hockey. We have a great broadcast location there, so that tends to color my opinion of any arena. And we're right on top of things there. So Montreal, from a hockey standpoint, I really love it. Vancouver's a beautiful building too, and a beautiful city. I mean, I can go on and on. I mean, there's a couple I might not like too much. I'm not a big fan of Edmonton. The rink is big and gorgeous, but we're like 7 miles from the ice surface there. It's awful. It's the worst by far in the league, and they just put this building in, and they basically put the broadcasters so far away it's hard to call a game. And I'm not a huge fan of Edmonton as a city either, so that would probably be one spot that I don't love, and yet ironically it's one of the finalists, I understand, for one of the hub cities. So it is a beautiful building. I mean, for the fans it's probably a great building, but from a broadcasting standpoint, not a big fan. Other cities I don't like, there's just not many of them. I mean, I love St. Louis. It's kind of a big town as opposed to a city. Nashville, how can you not love Nashville? Detroit's maybe a little rough, but they're doing a lot of great things in downtown Detroit to make that city better. And the new building is beautiful. So I really don't have many complaints. I mean, I like most of a lot of people might say Buffalo, but I'm from upstate New York. I'm not going to diss my where I came from. And Buffalo is a great area. A lot of people retire in Buffalo. A lot of players retire there. Scotty Bowman lives around Buffalo. I mean, if these people are staying there after their careers, there's obviously some good things about the area, right? So I really don't have that many complaints. Ottawa, maybe Ottawa's the building's way out in the middle of nowhere. We kind of stay out near the building, so there's not much going on. When we used to stay in Ottawa itself, it was beautiful. It's the capital city of Canada, great buildings and so forth. But now we stay out. We don't ever see Ottawa really when we're there, and the buildings out there, Ottawa, and the team hasn't been very good here lately. So that maybe isn't one of the favorite spots right now. But in general, I love all the places.
So let's shift gears to the Flyers and when the Flyers return. Do you believe that when the NHL comes back, they're a legit cup contender, the Flyers?
Yeah, and there's no doubt. I mean, we're in the world of the unknown here, and I like your confidence, Jacob, saying when they come back, because there's a lot of things happening right now that are pretty scary out there. The Tampa Bay Lightning just moments ago closed their facility as they've got some COVID cases. The Phillies, they've got some issues. Florida is obviously in a bit of an issue right now, and that's bad news for the NBA, which wanted to open there, soccer, and for the teams that reside there. So, yeah, we have some issues, but hopefully we do get back to playing. And if they do, the Flyers, I would say, have to be one of the teams that you'd have to say are a threat. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty. We have a young rookie goal, or not rookie anymore, but he's a rookie playoff goalie. And how Carter Hart withstands that first test in the playoffs, even without fans, will be interesting. A lot of playoff rookies throughout the lineup. But Elliott has done a great job with his team, and he's a veteran coach who's won a lot in the playoffs. So I don't have any doubt that he'll know what to do to get these guys going. So I don't know why you wouldn't consider them a threat. They were right near the top of the league and pretty much had proven outside of maybe Tampa that they could beat any of the top teams. So I think you have to consider them a threat for sure.
Do you think that playing without fans is a negative or positive for the Flyers?
Negative. I mean, they had a great home record, and obviously, and I think the Wells Fargo Center was just voted the best building in the league by an NHL.com poll. They had built up a significant home ice advantage here that won't be part of the mix, so they lose that. I don't think it's a kind of negative that will paralyze them or really affect them to a huge degree. It's just an advantage that they lose. It's going to be an even playing field for everybody. No noise from fans whatsoever. So it's not like one team has an advantage over the other.
Yeah, the Flyers, I mean, what sort of toll do you think it's going to take on them? They were so good at home this year, even in that game that they lost right before the shutdown against Boston. They played well. 2 bad breaks with the Bergeron goal at the end that sort of put the game away. What toll do you think it's going to take on the Flyers? Do you think they will be considerably worse without the home advantage, or do you think that they'll still be able to play at that level they were playing at before?
I like that, Jacob. You remember the details. That game to me seems like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But, and one of the reasons I've spent some of the time during the pause here, a long pause, I think we're going to have to call it a stop at this point, but it's 3 months. I've been finding old VHS tapes of playoff games that I broadcast for the Flyers. Yeah, they're on VHS. Do you guys even know what VHS is? They're tapes that come in boxes like this. Well, I have a whole bunch of games on that, and that, of course, starts to deteriorate. And I thought it was going to be a retirement project for me, but the pandemic's given me the opportunity to actually take those and digitize them, turn them into files, and put them on my computer. So I don't have to watch the entire game as I do it, but I do have to edit them down. So I'm seeing a lot of these games. So it seems like I've seen about 200 games since the Flyers last played that game against Boston. And I think to the players, it's also going to seem, guys, like it's been a long time. I don't think you can carry any of that momentum over. I really don't. They were as hot as any team, really, when the stop took place. But I just don't. I mean, 3 months is basically a regular off season that they've had since they last played. And in a normal off season, they're getting more skating than they've gotten in this pandemic because the rinks have been closed. So they're just here over the last couple of weeks getting out to skate again. So it's I don't the momentum factor, I think it goes out the window. I just don't think you can carry any of that over. It's going to be everybody starting up, and some of those teams that are getting a second life that were in the position 17 through 24 have a legitimate shot. The Rangers, especially, because they were playing very well too. They have a lot of young talent. They seem to have caught on, and they seem like they know what they're doing. They could be a very dangerous team that wasn't in the playoff picture when the pause happened, but get this reprieve because of the 2014 tournament. And I think there are others too. So It's going to be very intriguing to see, and hopefully we get a chance to see how this whole tournament works.
Do you think the Flyers' main goal in the round robin play should be to jump up at least one spot to ensure they don't have to play the Penguins in the first round?
I don't think the Flyers are afraid of any team, to be honest with you.
I agree.
I think they want to use those round robin games to get their game going, and they're going to be playing good clubs. So it's a good test for them. I think most importantly for Alain Vigneault, I think he'll probably say this is, whether we win the games or not, we want to be playing well, get our game together. Seeding is not as important because obviously there's no home ice, right? So if they get the top seed, yeah, it's great. They play the lowest seed, but again, we're almost like throwing all these teams into a new mixing bowl, and it's all going to be different now. So I don't really know as if seeding has that much to do with it. I think most importantly for them in those first 3 games, they just want to be playing pretty well once they get into the 16-team tournament.
Which player do you think needs to step up during this round robin / playoff series or series?
That's a tough one. I mean, Carter Hart's going to get a lot of the attention. Goalies always do come playoffs, or in this case, the round robin. But really, it's about everybody, Jacob. You've got everybody who's been off for 3 months.
Yeah.
And really, by the time we play games, over 4 months, right? So it's a long time off, and most of, at least majority of 3 months not skating at all. Everybody's going to need to really ramp things up in training camp and be ready to go from the start of the game. So I don't know if you can pick one guy. Always the goalie is a key, but they're all going to need to be in good shape, or they're going to get injured. I mean, they're going to go from 0 to 60, and it's tough to do that without suffering injury unless you're really preparing hard before you play the games.
Do you see the Flyers giving Brian Elliott maybe one of those games in the round robin?
I don't know. I don't know if it's a necessity. Maybe they want to have him get a game in. There also is talk there will be some preseason games. Okay. So if they have 1 or 2 of those and he gets one of those games, or they split the games in half, they'll get him some action. Perhaps if they don't get these preseason games, they will play him in one of the round robin games. But at this point, if Carter Hart has a tough first game, I think they're going to want to get him back out there, right? Try to get him going. So number one motive for those games, as it is for the whole team, but in particular for the goaltenders, is going to be get him ready for those games in the 16-team tournament. So priority number one will be getting Carter Hart in his best of form as they can.
So one last question before we let you go. You mentioned that you had looked back on old games you had broadcasted. So do you have a favorite game that you broadcasted for the Flyers?
The funny thing is, in doing this, has brought back so many memories. But even more than that, it's made me remember things that kind of maybe slid into the many crevices of my brain. I mean, there's to watch Eric Lindros in his prime, and I got here for his second year, so I saw him years 2 through basically 8, and the Legion of Doom and Eric Lindros in 95, 96, 97 it was amazing to watch that. If I had one game, I mean, the obvious choice is going to be the 5 overtime game in Pittsburgh in 2000. I mean, that was NHL history. It was the longest game in the modern history of the NHL, 3rd longest game ever. So when you're part of history, you definitely remember that and treasure it. If I was one moment, it might be Boucher's save on Jokinen in the shootout to beat the Rangers to move on to the 2010 playoffs. If it was one sequence, it would probably be 2004. Sammy Kapanen gets belted by Darcy Tucker. He doesn't know where he is. They have to reel him in on the bench, all while the Leafs are almost scoring in Game 6. Esch makes a couple big saves. All of a sudden, Jeremy Roenick's going the other way. He scores. The Flyers go on to the conference finals. That might be the best sequence. But it's hard to pinpoint one particular game. There have been so many games. The penalty minute record against Ottawa in 2004 was a lot of fun to call. There were two hat tricks in the same playoff game, Couturier and Giroux against the Penguins in 2012. I mean, there have been so many great games that it's hard to pick just one, but those are some of them.
Well, Jim, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, Jacobs.
Yeah, thank you again, Jim.
Look forward to hearing you on the call when the NHL comes back.
Yeah.
I hope it's soon. I hope it's soon. Say your prayers, because we got a lot of things to overcome here, and more important things even than hockey. Obviously, the health of our citizens, the health of all the players, the health of all the fans, everything. So we got to take care of a lot of things. But hopefully, we get back to hockey here in July and into August, and we'll watch a very intriguing tournament, and then even more, hopefully, we're back to some sense of normal once we find a vaccine for this thing and we get back to playing with fans in the building, because that's really what sports are all about, having the fans there, building the atmosphere, and having the interaction with the players. So hopefully we head to all these things right now. And guys, good luck with your podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for being on. Appreciate it.